Hello everybody. Today I'll be going over the significant aspect of American history that has shaped the nation during times of fighting and conflict, the United States Draft. The draft, or the Selective Service System, has played a very crucial role in shaping the country's military history and ideals. It has influenced national policy, many individual lives, and public opinion. This may not seem like a big deal to many in our peaceful times, but it was to both of my great-grandfathers who were drafted in the 1960s. I did not have any conversations with these people as they were before my time, but what their kids, my grandparents, were able to talk about was their fear and the undesire to go. Both of my great-grandfathers were already married when they got drafted, and they were preparing for the Vietnam War. I thought this was all very interesting my entire life, and I truly wish I could have talked to them before they passed on, but I can still tell the history of the very thing they lived out. Active conscription ended in the 70s, but all it would take is a few papers to be signed in the government to reactivate the Selective Training and Service Act. That is, if the need arose for more slots in the military to be filled. There are also many modern talks in the government about including young women in the conscription acts. The history of the United States Draft reveals its pivotal role in shaping the nation's military policies, influencing societal attitudes towards service, and reflecting the delicate balance between individual liberties and national security. This ultimately leaves a lasting legacy in the history of our country. In this speech, I will go over the origins of the draft, the key moments in the draft's history, and the legacy it left behind. The origins of the draft. They began around as early as the Revolutionary and Civil War times. Starting with the colonial times, colonial America relied heavily on local militias for defenses during the late 17th and 18th centuries. Local conscription systems were established by each state to ensure able-bodied men could be called upon to protect the surrounding area and community. These militias had little federal guidance and almost no regulation. Progressing to this Revolutionary War era, when the American Revolutionary War began, militias still played a very crucial role in the great fight for independence. The Continental Congress struggled to maintain an effective fighting force in the war. This led to the first national conscription laws to recruit soldiers to the Army. However, the first widespread draft in the United States was initiated by Congress during the Civil War in the year 1863. This was known as the Conscription Act of 1863. According to the Selective Service System's historical timeline, this was a centralized federal system that was handled completely by the federal government. It was a response to meet the need for more manpower as the conflict raged on. The registration was handled by military squads sent to many houses looking for eligible males to fight. This caused great civil unrest and was very controversial. It can obviously be seen as a pivotal moment in the draft's history. These are the basic origins that the roots of the draft came from. The laws set in place by the early conscription acts are what led to many key moments of the draft's history. These important moments included both world wars and the Vietnam and Korean War. In 1917, the Selective Service Act was enacted by the government to draft troops for World War I to meet manpower needs. It set a precedent for future drafts and reflected changing views on the role of the military in a global perspective. According to the Selective Service System induction statistics of the years 1917 through 1918, 24 million men were registered, but only 2.8 million Americans were inducted. This came out to be only 8% of men registered being inducted. World War II saw the largest expansion of the draft to date that affected millions of Americans. It was also the nation's first peacetime draft. The Department of Defense states that nearly 10 million men were drafted throughout the war, of whom were each drafted to different military divisions. In the Korean and Vietnam Wars, around 3.1 million Americans were drafted throughout. Both the Korean and Vietnam War faced significant opposition from the citizens. These led to many protests and riots, but it generally caused mass social unrest. The draft became a symbol of resistance and caused many changes to national policy and American culture. This is one of the main reasons why we switched to an all-volunteer army. This is the chart showing the amount of men drafted throughout World War I to the Vietnam War and how it rose significantly in World War II. In the early 70s, the United States decided it was time to transition to an all-volunteer force. On July 1st, 1973, the draft was officially over and the transition was made. This obviously marked a landmark in history for our country. It also marked a significant change in approach to military service, emphasizing more freedom of choice and commitment. This is what led to the modern-day Selective Service System. The Selective Service System is still in place today. It is still required of young men to register, even though a draft has not happened since then. It serves more of a contingency plan, of course, as a symbol for national readiness. In conclusion, the origins of the United States draft are deeply rooted in the great nation's historical journey, with roots stemming from colonial militias to the decisive moments in the Civil War draft. These early events shaped the American approach to conscription that laid the foundation to the draft in both world wars and the Vietnam War. The history of the United States draft not only reveals its pivotal role in shaping the nation's military policies, but also highlights its influence on societal attitudes toward conscription and service. It reflects the intricate balance between individual liberties and national security, leaving a lasting legacy and deep roots of American history. Thank you.